Awesome. Cool. So I am really excited to have today I feel like I can say friend because I've known you for years, although I don't think we've ever met in person. But Amy, so do you know what? I'm going to let Amy introduce herself. So Amy, please, introduce yourself and just tell everybody a bit about who you are and your background.
Yeah, we have known each other for years. I was talking to my friend Nadia this morning about this. I was saying, like, because Nadia was also in that business group and we only became like friends in the last couple of years. I kind of always feel like there's lots of people that I meet that kind of go back to that like online beginning. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we have known each other. And also one of my couples you went to university with, Ed and Kirsten.
Was my roommate or my housemate, not roommate.
Yeah. So we haven't met in person. I'd really love to meet you in person, but yeah, we kind of have these like weird connections, which I really love. And we've always been aware of each other. So yeah, I'd say we're friends, definitely. So yeah, my name's Ami Robertson. Some people know me, some people don't. I do a number of different things. I'm a wedding photographer and I have been for 13 years now, which seems like an awfully long time. Yeah, I still enjoy it. I definitely want to do less. My bones hurt. It's not necessarily a career for me for like longevity, but definitely got another few years left in me. I also do brand and portrait photography. I particularly focus on working with small businesses, women, anyone who identifies as a woman, and I really, really love that. It's something I massively enjoy, just because it's the confidence building and giving people space and photographing people authentically. The woman in the wolf, which is my side of that, it's also a form of activism for me. It's a space where I can really express who I am and what my beliefs are, and I have a really beautiful audience over there as well and a community around it. And then I also own Snap Photography Festival, although I think we're dropping the photography festival part. I don't really relate to the festival bit. The festival bit doesn't really work for me anymore. So that's kind of dropping. It's just Snap. And we have a number of events. We have a community, which I really love running. I bought it a couple of years ago in 2021 and took over. So some people might remember Snap pre-pandemic. And we've just spent the last couple of years with my business partner, Rosie Holman, who's also amazing. We just spent the last couple of years very much making the space our own, which has been quite a big journey. We had our first big event this year, which was Big Snap, and it was genuinely one of the most profound experiences of my whole entire life. I'll probably cry because everyone cried a lot. And like the goal of Snap is, it's ultimately community. I also view it as another form of activism. Like we were just talking before the call, I think we're both on the same page about how we feel about the industry. And like we really want to create a massively safe space for people. I'm autistic. My business partner Rosie as well. Like we both fall into certain marginalized groups, and we've definitely had the experience of being in a lot of spaces where we don't feel safe. We don't want that for Snap. We want to kind of create a truly safe community, which is also why we do a lot of free stuff, because we want it to be accessible. I kind of really hate capitalism. I kind of feel like capitalism tarnishes stuff. So while yes, Snap eventually does need to make money so we can become sustainable in that sense, like that's not our like main reason for it, which is why we do a lot of free stuff. And we're also bringing back our online workshops, and we're having like a smaller retreat this autumn. And yeah, the company is really going to be evolving. We have some interesting plans for the future.
Awesome. So you've kind of touched on it, but what was your like main motivating factor to take over Snap? So obviously it's something that I knew before you took it over. It was an event that I attended twice, and I already, even though I know it's gone through some changes, thought it was one of the most welcoming, inclusive events that I'd been to as far as events in the photography industry go and education spaces. But yeah, what was your kind of motivation for taking that step and taking on that big project?
I think like, obviously, I think for a lot of us, the pandemic probably like forced us into corners, that's probably not the right phrase, but probably pushed us to do stuff that we might not have done before the pandemic. And one of those things for me was like education, and teaching people. And it was something I really, really enjoyed doing. And I've run courses a couple of times since. I started doing like online free workshops for people, just because people needed help. Like, it was a really shit time for people, like their mental health was bad, like it was that bringing of people together, feeling less alone. So when Laura Babb approached me about Snap, I mean, it took me like 3 months to make a decision. It was a big decision to make, and there was lots of conversations, and obviously buying a company is an entirely different experience to starting one. So the whole process took quite a long time, but I think that there was two things that really like pushed me over that edge, and that was the fact that my friend Rosie wanted to work with me. We've known each other a very long time, and I think we've been discussing some ways to work together. Rosie isn't a photographer, she's a jazz singer, musician, performer. She has lots of experience with events and things like that, so I very much felt like it wasn't something I wanted to do on my own. I should mention as well, my mum is also a silent partner. She owns like 25% of the company, and her kind of area of expertise is like finance and things like that. So but she's not really a front facing person within the space. So yeah, there was that, the idea of doing something with other people that felt really good, and also it just felt like a really right next step. I think how it's evolved over the last couple of years for me personally, obviously there's quite a lot of hard challenges with taking over a company and someone else's brand, especially Snap, because it was quite a personal brand as well. But yeah, I'm really happy that we did it, and it was just something that I felt that I couldn't say no to, and felt like a very positive evolution in my career, and also what I want my impact to be on the industry, which sounds really big-headed, but like I'm not really made for small things.
I totally get that. So you decided to take on Snap, which, as you said, is a huge thing. So you kind of mentioned, I don't know if this was in pre-talking or recording, it's all blurring into one now, before that you kind of maybe felt like the photography education space was missing something. So what was it that you kind of thought that you wanted to bring into the education space with Snap that you thought wasn't really being addressed or kind of working?
So there's like a number of things within the education space. So I suppose really I could only just go back to like my experience pre-pandemic. And like for people who know me, I talk about it a lot. Obviously I'm autistic, I mentioned it earlier. I really struggle. Like I struggle a lot with spaces, and 2018 me just wouldn't go to anything. Online was okay, but even going to like a coffee morning would induce like huge anxiety for me. And as well, I suppose some of like my other background around that is, I was in an abusive relationship for the best part of a decade. So like that was also not really something that made workshops and stuff accessible. And I did attend a couple, and one I went to, and it was like 3 days, and it was not a massive group, but we all stayed in the same place, and I don't think I spoke more than 5 words for the entire 3 days. And it just, I did take some value from it, but I felt very anxious, and I felt very like I didn't fit in. And I now know that's my general thing around life, is that I don't feel like I fit in most of the time. Obviously I feel more confident about that now than I did then. But there are so many people, especially from marginalized communities, neurodivergent people, introverted people, who do not have access to education within our industry, because these kind of like big events and like cliquey groups are totally inaccessible to them, because like it's terrifying. While I know that some people really benefit from these quite extroverted communities, there's a lot of people who don't, and because they're built for those extroverted, probably neurotypical spaces, it makes them really unsafe for people who don't fall within that kind of space. Yeah, I kind of felt like that was really very much missing. And I'm a big believer that if not everyone is safe in a space, then no one's actually safe in it. And that includes people who might not be present, because I've definitely been to workshops and conferences before where language especially has been a massive problem.
Okay, interesting. So how does that then fit in practice when you are planning the year for SNAP, when you're planning the small events, but also the larger events, choosing speakers? Like, tell me about what that looks like on the ground, planning an event that is a safe space, that is inclusive and welcoming.
So I think there's like lots of different elements that come into this, and I'm still learning as well. I really want to point that out, that I am very much still learning. And one of our big values with SNAP is that you can hold us to account if we get something wrong, and it will be met with safety and openness. So like if I say something wrong, or I say anything that upsets anyone, you can contact me. I'm completely fine with that. I think that's just really important to mention, because I also think that a lot of these spaces kind of have pedestal culture with the people who run them, which makes people feel like they can't speak out or they can't hold them to account. And everyone gets defensive around accountability because no one likes to be told that they've done something wrong. But actually, that's probably one of the most important parts of running a space, like any space, anywhere. Like if it's your family or your relationship or your partner, the ability to hold people to account safely, and with like an openness to discussion, I think is one of the most important things. So yeah, that's probably the main element. But also I think like face value, our lineups. I put a great deal of time into researching my lineups. We've had a couple of big names like speak this year, but we also make a real point of maybe finding people who haven't spoken before. We don't want to be just an event that's like how to take nice photos or how to build a really cool brand. Like obviously that stuff's important. We actually really want to give people tools within their business, because I think being a photographer is kind of the easy part. Running a sustainable business that's balanced and healthy, and that you can enjoy running and you can still have a life and you don't exhaust yourself, is probably like the top of that pile of learning. So we do seek out people who can really like give actionable tools, like who are living that as well. We put a lot of time and effort, and also giving a platform to people who might not be given the opportunity to, because they don't have a huge Instagram following, or like they are from more marginalized groups. I've turned people away, quite big names, because who've approached us to speak, because I'm like, you did like 4 conferences, like your talk's not going to be different. So I think that's like an important part of it as well, is bringing like as much diversity to the conversations, and non-photographers as well. We have a lot of non-photographers speak at our conferences, and there's also an element of activism as well. Like we've got Kyrie Faye speaking next year. I'm like still gobsmacked that he said yes. Like he's incredible. Everyone should check out his Smiling Boys project, and he's Universal Soul Artist on Instagram. But when we talked, because his work is based in activism, and that when we talked, and he was like, you know, I'm not really about the how, I'm about the why, and we're interested in the why. So we really want to bring those conversations as well. So yeah, I think lineups are really important. Paying people fairly and equally, I also think is massively important. Like Snap cost me a lot of money this year, me personally, because every single person who worked for us during that week was paid, and was paid appropriately for their time and experience. Like it's quite a lot to ask, especially people who are parents, and maybe they're the primary childcare people, to ask them to come away for 3 days and only pay them like £400 or £500. Like they're not even going to make a profit with like travel, childcare, all of those things. So like we do our best to pay people like appropriately for their time. And it's the same with everyone who works for us. All of our suppliers for the style sheet were paid, all of our models were paid. Like I think like having those ethical grounds in how you operate that way is really important as well. And then also I think kind of trying to do your best to remove pedestal culture and make it as accessible as possible. So like me and Rosie, we run a lot of free stuff throughout the year. We run co-working, which is in person. We also do some online, usually about once a week. We have a summer picnic. We do headshot swaps. Like we generally have something that's going on for free every month, because we know how hard it is sometimes for people to come into a community or a group, and if you can remove the barrier of money, it makes it a lot easier for them to kind of come into that space. We also have our Christmas party, and we're kind of going to be doing some like actual in-person workshops. We have some ideas. I've just been like, since the end of Snap at the end of April, I didn't realize how long I needed to recover, because it also takes a lot from me. So we're just starting to pick things up now. We also do our podcast as well, which we're starting recording again next week. So it's a good way for people to get to know us. And yeah, we just like, especially at Snap this year, like me and Rosie, we don't like separate ourselves from everyone. We check in with everyone. We want to make sure that if you ask anyone who came to Snap, I think I probably asked everyone if they were okay about 10 or 11 times, because I just want to make sure that everyone feels okay and that they feel like safe within the space, and that also they can approach us at any kind of given time. I also think like the willingness to be vulnerable and like authentic and honest, to tell the truth, really also creates these types of spaces, because when people can see you pushing through your awkwardness or your social anxieties, but also acknowledging that you have them as well, rather than being like, oh, I never struggle, I'm always confident, everything's always amazing. I think when you're honest about your struggles, it means that people can connect with that, and that in itself is being inclusive, because you're not projecting like a highlight reel. So yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff that, you know, just asking basic questions like on intake forms, like what are your pronouns, do you need any additional support to come to this event, you know, just acknowledging those things and making sure that people know that they have permission to like not be okay if that's the case. And I think as well at the actual event, having quieter spaces where people, and rooms, so like not bombarding people with like 7 or 8 talks in one day, but having like 4 talks and plenty of breaks, space for people to go for a walk or go and sit quietly, and to also know that there's permission to do that no one's going to think you're rude or weird because like you're sat on your own. Like it might just be because you need to like regulate yourself. And yeah, and also support for the people who speak at our events, because like, as I said, some of them might not have ever done public speaking before. So I do make it really clear that like in the build up to the event that they have access to me for any sort of support that they might need. And yeah, just in terms of like style shoot as well, like we had a really diverse team, and I had like the people who work with us know that they can also hold us to account, like if we're getting something wrong or they think something needs changing. Like we spent more money on models because we wanted to represent as many different types of people and bodies as possible. We had Steph do Stephanie Dreams photography. She's amazing. Like if you want to learn about being more inclusive for the LGBTQ+ community, like she's the person you want to speak to. We had her do like a whole talk before the start of the style shoot about pronouns, about how to work with people safely, and like the style shoot was genuinely like, it could have been chaos, and I think a few people were worried that it was going to be chaos, but everyone was so kind to each other, everyone was so nice to the models, like everyone got a fair turn, like it was just a really beautiful, enjoyable experience. But I think it's because you set the tone for what you want that to be, and it's that putting inclusivity, safety, and diversity at the front of what you do and not as an afterthought.
Mm-hmm. So I know from my own experience, like when I was starting out as a photographer, like going to bigger industry events and conferences, like as someone who is really introverted, like I will also sometimes just go off by myself because it's less stressful than trying to talk to people. So
Mm-hmm.
And from my experience of some of these like bigger events, these big conferences that everybody knows, sometimes they can feel like they always talk about that they have a community, but from my experience, these communities often felt very cliquey, and like as a new person coming into it, it felt very hard to kind of go in and be welcomed by that community. It wasn't that people weren't unwelcoming, but especially as an introvert, you kind of just like, well, they've already got their friendship group, and it just felt kind of awkward. So for like when you started running STAP or for the ones coming up, because I know you're very community focused as well, for the people who might be listening who feel like I felt going into things where you're like, oh, but I'm just going to feel like I don't belong there because they already all know each other. Like how do you approach that as an event organizer?
So I think cliques are a really interesting thing. And I think when you understand why cliques form, that means that you can kind of tackle them head on. And there's nothing wrong with cliques. There's nothing wrong with having friendship groups at all. But the reason that cliques get formed is usually because everyone's insecure, right? So most people are socially anxious, especially creatives. There's very few creative people that I know who don't have some form of social anxiety or struggle with some sort of self-esteem issues. So when you do form relationships with people and you do form connections, when you're then in like a big space, such as an event, it's very natural for people who know each other to like orbit towards one another because they feel safe there. Like I think that's completely normal. But of course, that can unintentionally become toxic. And it can be problematic, you know, say several years down the line when you've got more people coming into the fold, and you know, they're feeling the connection between the other people and they feel like they're an outsider and they can't kind of fit in. So I think it's like, I think just acknowledging that for a start is like a really key thing. But again, going back to that accessibility, that's why we do the free events throughout the year. So people have the opportunity to come and form relationships with people who are already in the community. And like me and Rosie are at the forefront of that. Like we don't, it's not something that we're doing without any kind of thought or lack of intention. Like it's a big project for us because like we're also kind of making sure, and I'd like to point out that Rosie is like way better at this stuff in kind of action than I am, because in my autism, it can also sometimes look like I'm good one-on-one, but groups, I'm just like, oh God, like I'm much better. I think our workshop last year that we did in Derby, like Rosie's so good at like checking in on people, introducing them to other people, kind of really like working in a room that way, while I'll be like washing the dishes because I'll just be I'll be finding it a little bit overwhelming. So you know, in actual physical space we both work really well, but yeah, just that kind of checking in and just being aware, like if you see people on their own, if you see they're struggling, asking them if they're okay, and but also asking them if they want to talk, because they might be doing exactly what you're saying and just needing a minute to kind of recharge again. So yeah, I think it's like a combination of different things to tackle those things, but I don't think there's anything bad with clicks. I just think it's making sure that and again, if you create a safe space that people feel empowered and confident in, then the people within those cliques are going to feel more confident about talking with people who are outside their kind of main group of friends. So yeah, I think it's just being intentional again with the people you have in your space.
Yeah, awesome. So something I was reading on the Snap website earlier mentioned about how at Snap you also think about different people's learning styles. Now, for you and I, we've probably, like for me as well, from an education background, like I know already what that means, but like how do you approach then that to make, again, with that accessibility thing in mind, of considering how different people learn differently? Like, or I guess let's start with, how do you see other events not maybe being so accessible in that way, and how do you do that with Snap?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things, and again, it's probably just mainly from my own experience, I really struggle with sitting in a room for a long period of time and staring at a screen. I really struggle when there isn't enough natural light. Yeah, and also like sometimes like noise or loud music, and like it can be quite distracting. It's like if I'm in a restaurant and I'm with someone, I have to sit where I can face the room. I can't have the room behind me. So I think like it's just trying to be aware of how people come into spaces. But I think for most people on the whole, like I've never really gotten on with the whole style of sitting in a dark room for like 8-9 hours and looking at a screen. I'm going to get to a stage after like a couple of talks where I'm not absorbing information, my body hurts, and I'm starting to feel quite tired and quite anxious by that point. So like while people might not see it as much value, we don't pack our days out like as heavily, and we also don't have like, we only have 8 speakers in total. We have 8 talks, and they run from kind of like 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and there's like 15-20 minute breaks between each one. We also let people know that like, it's like when, I don't know who else does this, but if I start reading a book and I'm not getting anything from it, or I already know it, I'm now giving myself permission to stop reading the book. I don't need to finish the book. And I think, you know, in some spaces and conferences, you might start listening to a talk and actually you're kind of like, oh, I know this stuff. I don't need to sit here. I'm going to go for a walk instead. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, and making sure that people are aware that they can do that. But yeah, I think just spacing things out better, having lots of breaks, but also I mean, we had like lots of technical problems with Snap this year, which could have been a total disaster, but it wasn't at all. Our projector was not great. We were obviously in a school activity centre, but that didn't kind of stop. We just kind of made sure as well that we posted the slides to the Facebook group for people. So if people wanted their laptop in front of them, they could see the slides on their laptop. And yeah, I think it's just being flexible in the moment as well. And again, just allowing people to come and tell you what they need as well. And knowing that they can do, they're not being a problem. Because I don't know, I definitely feel like when the majority are happy, I just need to go along with it, which I now don't agree with. But yeah, so I think, yeah, it's just a number of different things that we do.
Okay. I mean, just intrigued, you said you now don't agree with that. What do you mean by that?
So I was thinking about this yesterday in a yoga class. And I was like a thought that popped into my head. So like, you know, when like as a group you're doing something, and I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but okay, say like you've all agreed to spend a weekend together with a group of friends, and someone like the majority take a vote on what activities you're going to do, and then that defines the entire weekend. And you've say got 2 or 3 people in that group who might be neurodivergent, or they might be autistic, or they might be introverted, and they either feel like, because they know that they can't speak up to say, actually, I don't want to do that activity, they then feel like they have to do that because everyone else wants to do it. And that always kind of seems to be the norm in group behavior. And actually, I think it should be reversed, or there should be other options. And I do think people are better at doing this in general. I know that when I was like younger, that would be just like a no. It was like, you just do it. And the same in like school and education and things like that. Yeah, I was just thinking about it last night in yoga, about how can we put that into practice? Like, what other options can we give people? Or like, how can we empower people even more to speak up if they're not okay, or they're struggling, or they don't want to do that, or they know that doing that is going to be bad for them. I think it's that going back to that self-care again, and having boundaries and knowing yourself. But then how do you apply that in group situations so everyone can get the most of being in spaces? I don't know if that made any sense at all, but it's just what I was thinking about last night, how we tend to lean towards what makes the majority happy, as opposed to actually maybe we could do this instead and everyone else will still really enjoy it, rather than doing stuff that's potentially harmful to that minority, and ignoring their needs. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes me think a little bit back to a lot of spaces I've found myself in as a teenager and as a young adult, especially like the university spaces, where sometimes I would just get up and leave, because I literally would just be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. See ya. And I would just walk out, because I was like, I feel less uncomfortable just going than actually saying, or than going along with what everyone else was doing. Like, yeah, but it, oh, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, and that's, you've just pinpointed the biggest problem, is that like sometimes, especially someone who has autism, sometimes I'm really uncomfortable voicing what I need from people. You know, right down to my accountants at the moment. I know I frustrate my accountants because of certain needs that I have, and because of how they respond sometimes to me voicing those needs from them, I then start to feel like, well, I can't ask, like, and now I'm just going to become even more overwhelmed and stressed because we have to match your energy, when actually that energy is quite harmful to me. And I think it's like, it's also like, when people, and I'm not going to name the specific group, it's something I go to, but I went to for the first time, and apparently they all have a hug before they do like the thing. And I'm like, I don't really like people touching me, especially if I don't know them. And you can kind of see everyone like, kind of like, oh, what's wrong with her? And it's like, sometimes because of my autism, physical touch hurts me. Like, it hurts my skin. And it's not like a personal thing against people. So yeah, but I've noticed the more I've started voicing my needs as an autistic person and asking people to be flexible, you can see the resistance. You can see the like, oh, I have to change my behavior for you. And that's what you're kind of talking about. It then becomes easier just to remove yourself from the space, and that's exclusion.
Yeah. Something that you dropped in when we were just chatting before this, which I guess kind of links to that is like with conferences, there's always, whenever I've been to them, like big parties, which like, so recently for us, for me, I was at Way Up North, and because I was a speaker there, I kind of felt like I had to go, even though I really didn't want to, because those spaces just, I just hate them. Yeah, there's that thing of like, I can just sit at the side and feel awkward and look awkward, or I can get drunk so that I then don't feel so stressed about it. Luckily I had my husband to just like sit in a corner and chat with a lot of the time. But yeah, like how do you like think about stuff like that as well with STAP? Do you do a party still? Or you mentioned that you did last year, will you do again next year? And like, how are you approaching that?
Yeah, so party culture is definitely a thing, and going back to the drinking culture as well, I have had a complicated relationship with alcohol throughout my life. I only got my autism diagnosis last year, so now I realize that my binge drinking was purely to be able to cope with these massive social situations, and that my kind of, I can have a couple of drinks and I can be okay. But I definitely get to a point when I'm drinking where like anxiety takes over. And I actually had a very big panic attack at an event earlier this year because I drank too much. I found the event quite stressful, and overwhelming and overstimulating. And then of course the party is like the main event, right? And like I will completely put our hands up, like we also were selling it as a main event for, you know, the first kind of half of selling Snap that we've just had, because we thought that that was how we sell tickets, because everyone wants this party and you have this party culture, and it's a very important thing. And there's nothing wrong with that for some people, but actually I speak to a lot of people who literally just said this, what you said, I need to get drunk in order to be able to cope and to be able to feel like I can like be in that space and connect with others. And I think that's really dangerous, personally, from my own personal experience. And I wasn't really aware of it until the last couple of years, because yeah, I've been in, not just through conferences or workshops or stuff, but like my kind of 20s, definitely some quite dangerous situations because of that, leaning on alcohol in order to be able to socialize. So we kind of experienced this year, and we do have our Christmas party, which is quite a big event, but we applied the same kind of ethics of inclusivity and, you know, talking with people and being within the space, and we've definitely learned lessons from hosting 2 of those parties, and I think as we learn more lessons, that's going to evolve. So it's not that we don't want to provide a party, and I think it's really nice to have a kind of end of year get together with everyone, and that event won't be ideal for everyone either. I know we're going to make it a bit smaller this year. That's our plan, because it's been quite big with over 100 people the last couple of years. But yeah, the party at Snap, it wasn't the main thing. Like we didn't make it the kind of like the ultimate end, the like big thing that everyone needs to get dressed up for or do fancy dress. Like I hate fancy dress. I absolutely hate it. I can't, one of the things with autism, if you know autistic people, is that we can't really see the point, like in some things, and it's not because we don't care, it's just because we just don't get it, and being made to feel like we have to do that can actually be quite distressing. So yeah, we didn't have like any expectations, and when we just told people that there would be some music playing at 9 o'clock. If people wanted to come in their pajamas, they could come in their pajamas. If they wanted to get dressed up, they could get dressed up. We'd also have the campfires going, so if people didn't want to be in that space, then they could. We also had board games still out and stuff, and we had a whole separate area if people wanted to go and talk. We had lots of outdoor space. And it was amazing. Like everyone kind of, like Kayla says, Rosie DJ'd. Rosie sang actually as well at the beginning, so she's a singer. And it was just really special because obviously we'd all been bonding for like the last kind of few days. yeah, Rosie sang, and then everyone danced, and there wasn't like any like big drinking. People had drinks. I think I had one, but that was the first time in my life that I have danced for like 4 hours with a group of people without alcohol, without like, I just had one drink, like where I wasn't drunk. And to feel safe to do that is amazing. And yeah, there was people who got a bit drunk, but there was no drama. There was none of that, like, who's going to get with who energy. It was just nice. It was just a group of people wanting to have fun together. Not everyone did the party bit. Other people went to the campfire and told ghost stories. Some people went to bed. And I think when you remove that pressure, actually it's better. And what happens is more genuine and more authentic and also safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really love that. Yeah, it's, especially you touched on it there, a big pain point for me is themed parties. Like, and funny, my husband pointed out to me recently that especially he's like the Brits love dress up, but the thing that really gets me actually with themed parties of any kind is, for me, it's the sustainability issue of, if you've got a theme, then people are pressured to buy something new often that they don't already have, that they're never going to wear again, that just gets chucked out afterwards. I'm just like, why are you putting that pressure on people when it's just about, it's not what the space should be about. Yeah, that's a side note, really, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I should be back.
Yep. Yeah, you're back.
That was a pretty clean blip, so yeah. It's easy to edit out.
Exactly. That will be easy to edit out. Right. So,
I mean, yeah, we've definitely been thinking about that, what you just said about sustainability, because the Christmas party for the last couple of years has been like glitter, like sequin themed one. And sequins are really bad for the planet. So while I have like my Rosa Bloom play suit, which I wear every year, I don't buy something new for it. I know that other people were buying something new for it. So I think like this year, we're probably not going to put that type of theme on it. For the reasons like I just last year, I was a bit like, because I saw lots of people like posting that they were shopping for like their outfit, and even though I was reusing mine, I know that a lot of people weren't. So yeah, we're definitely like thinking about like removing that stuff. And the thing is, like, people think that by taking away that stuff that it's not therefore fun, but actually when you remove the masks and the performance and you just have like real connection and authenticity and care, there's more fun. And some of the men who came to Snap this year all said that while like they were in a minority, because obviously Snap is more of a female space, and because of like how we expect our community to behave towards one another, their feedback was, I just had a really beautiful conversation with several of them where they were like, I felt like I was really challenged, and there were some really uncomfortable conversations, and it's really made me think about how I behave in the world. But I didn't realize how much joy there was within those spaces, because it's vulnerable, because it's real, because it's honest. And I think it's and not or, like the two go together. Hard conversations and real joy and real connection sit side by side. You can't have them separate. They are together. That's just a fact.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So I guess like now you run an event. Do you still also go to events yourself?
I'm not going to be. I was, but I've decided that I've just decided that in terms of my choices, because it's my choices too, right? I know that spaces run by people from marginalized groups, like so workshops that are run by people from the LGBTQ community or people of color, like they're going to have this stuff at the front of their mind, and especially women as well, and other genders that aren't straight, cisgendered men, because they have their own experiences in the world, which can be really hard, they will be thinking about this for other people, or I'd hope they would be. And I think, but I also think that's why a lot of people from more marginalized groups don't step into these roles, because they're also really, it's also really hard. Like, there's a really hard side to this, when you don't play by the majority rules. People have quite strong opinions about that, but you know what? I'm gonna have a real neurodivergent moment. What was the question?
And now I have to remember as well. Oh, just whether you go to events yourself.
Oh, yeah. Not anymore, because it was my experience of being at Snap, because we didn't we did all this stuff with the desire to be a safer space. I did not expect what would happen. Like, it didn't, like, I have never I've never felt that level of connection with like that group, with that bigger group of people before, and for everyone to feel it as well. Like, it's so hard to put into words. Like, it's so hard to put into words. And I've never experienced that. And I have been to a lot of conferences and workshops over like the last couple of years, and we've also hosted our own, and this was just like something else. And yeah, like, I do want to continue learning, but I also realize that I can continue learning through the space that I facilitate. Like, I don't need to go into spaces where actually I felt unsafe and anxious and would take me weeks to recover from. So no, I won't be. And actually, if I didn't have Snap, I think I probably would have stopped going as well, because there's just, we were talking about it before the call, and it's the lack of safety and the willingness to be accountable and to change your behavior to make everyone feel safe. Like, I get it, it's really hard, and I've seen this play out so much in so many different spaces, where misogyny has come up, where sexism has come up, where racism, homophobia, performative behavior, tokenizing, like all of these things, where they've shown up, and then you have a massive fallout. And actually, how I've seen it play out as well before is again the pedestal culture. So like, these communities, they create cultures, and they're usually more around men as opposed to women, and it's like, we've got to protect the culture at all costs. Like, we've got to protect the kind of rock star people who run it. They can do no wrong. And when they're then held to account or criticized by people who aren't maybe within the community, it's like all fucking hell breaks loose. And it's like, what is wrong with accountability? Of course they're going to get things wrong. I'm going to get things wrong. They're going to get things wrong. Everyone is going to get things wrong, because that is the nature of being human. But it becomes toxic when people can't meet accountability with safety, which is what we talked about at the beginning, because they get defensive. And I understand it. I do understand that defensiveness, because if you roll back 5 or 6 years, where I was probably a very different person, I probably wasn't a very safe person. I've had a lot of therapy since then, but I was probably quite a toxic person. I probably wasn't very safe. I didn't really think of other people very much. If someone criticized me, I would feel defensive, and I would want to argue with that, or, you know, remove them from my space or my friendship group or whatever, instead of being like, okay, what can I do to make sure that I don't do this again? Like, what can I change? Because the other thing to remember as well, and this goes back to the care of the industry and the people within the industry, people don't, it takes a lot of courage to hold something to account. It takes a lot of courage to speak out against something that is wrong, when you know that you're going to, it kind of feels like you're stepping out on your own. You see it all the time with women who face sexual harassment in workplaces, so many of them will remain silent because actually they are the ones who will wind up being vilified. Like, it takes a great deal of risk and courage to stand up and speak out and say, that is not right, that is not okay, please can you change your behavior. But the other thing that people forget is that people don't do that unless they really care about something. Like, otherwise you just remove yourself, like what you were saying earlier. Otherwise you just take yourself out of the space. Like, why would you say anything unless you want it to change, because you want it to be better for you, because you want your relationship to be better with it, because you want the community to be better, because you want everyone to be better. Like, it's not for fun. People aren't speaking out or asking for accountability for shits and giggles. Like, it's because they care. And I think when you can switch to that mindset, it becomes a lot easier to not be quite so defensive.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess switching it from the people attending to people who are actually running these kinds of events. So whether it's people who might be listening who already do run events, or are thinking that that's maybe the next step in their business journey, is to run a workshop or host a conference or some kind of educational space. What advice would you give to them to say, like, if you care about inclusivity, diversity, accessibility, what can they do to ensure they are creating this welcoming space?
So there's a couple of things here, and there's one that I want to address because it's just popped into my head and it's really important, and this is for people attending workshops, whether it's style shoots or conferences or whatever. If personally, I wouldn't touch a workshop or an event if they are not actively showing that they are being inclusive and diverse. And I'm not talking about tokenizing. Like, marginalized people are not for your portfolio. Like, you should have a portfolio that represents all body types. And diversity, again, isn't just sexuality, gender, or skin color. It's also body types. It's also neurodiversity. It's disabilities. It's like, I will never forget when started my photography journey, I had a very brief mentoring with a man who told me not to show anyone over a size 12 in my portfolio. And I still hear of these practices now within mentoring, saying, oh, don't show the weddings with the less pretty people. So I personally wouldn't touch a styled shoot if they are just going to have white, thin, beauty standards. Like, for me, beauty is not white, thin people. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're giving money to the spaces who are actively wanting to make the industry more inclusive and more diverse and to represent people better. And that means, if you see, say, like an event or a workshop saying they're doing like an LGBTQ style shoot, for example, look at how they're allying themselves with that community. Do they do other talks? Do they do talks on how to be more inclusive? Are they using good language on their on their website, inclusive language? Because it's a bandwagon that people are jumping on at the moment. And they have been for a long time. It's definitely not new. And support people. And I'm not an expert in this either, so I would really recommend engaging with someone like Stephanie Dreams Photography, who's LGBTQ Love for All. She's doing our style shoot next year, so that's the other thing as well. Like, I'm going through a process with my sexuality at the moment. I'm not going to say what that is, but I'm definitely not an expert in LGBTQ plus, and I'm always learning, which is why when it comes to our style shoot, we work with people who do know how to make sure that it's not performative, that it's not tokenizing. So if you are hosting an event and you're a straight cisgendered person, and you're having some sort of a style shoot, get a planner on board who's from the LGBTQ community, or get another photographer who's from the LGBTQ community. work with a diverse team. Like, don't try and save money, because like that also annoys me, like not paying models properly, not like seeking out models who are from like different backgrounds. Like, yeah, I just think there's a lot to think about, and if you're not prepared to do those things, then you shouldn't be saying that you're, or behaving like you might be an ally, because that's really, really dangerous. But yeah, so if you're attending a workshop, do your research on that workshop if they are saying these things. But I think everyone should be doing those things anyway, and learning. Like, I do a lot of work on myself. Like, you are not a safe person to create safe spaces if you're not actively doing the work inside of yourself to dismantle your own biases. So like, I'm white, which means that I have to undo my unconscious bias around racism. I have to be actively working on those things. I'm mostly able-bodied. Yes, I'm neurodiverse, but I also need to be working to dismantle those biases that I might have towards the disabled community. It's the same with the LGBTQ community, like, because we're brought up to hate difference. Like, that's how the world works around us. So I think if you want to be creating safe spaces, you have to first of all, make yourself a safe person, and that takes work and effort. And lots of people want to skip that part because they think they want to make money. And that's not right. That's not okay, because all you're doing is accumulating power while harming other people in the process. So yeah, do the work on yourself as well. Have a team of people, different people. I've already said that, but I'm just going to reiterate it because I think it's really, really important. And listen to your community. Like, make it really clear that you want to create a safe space, and you want people to feel safe in it, and you want to be welcoming, and you want to be inclusive because you want to be accessible, because you actually give a shit. Like, that means speaking to your community, asking for views and criticism from outside of your community. What do the people who don't come to your events think of your event? Like, and why are they not coming to your event? And have open conversation, and, you know, don't try not to see it as an attack. It can feel like that, and that's okay. But I think that's the other thing to remember as well, is that in conversations with people who are more marginalized than you or have less privilege than you, like, your feelings can't be centered in those conversations, like, at all, which again is really hard for people. So yeah, I think when you're running events and you want to create safe spaces, which I think everyone should do, there is a lot of work that needs to happen there. And it's definitely not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. We still have lots to learn, like huge amounts to learn. And we're probably going to make more mistakes because that's what happens. But like, we are striving to do better and be better humans. So I think, yeah, you know, I'm not going to say that this is easy. Snap isn't profitable yet. It costs me money. It's like a social justice project. But I hope that one day it will be profitable. And the reason I stick with it is because I really believe that it's important, and that it's not about me making money. Do need to be paid because we pay everyone else. But yeah, and that's the other thing as well. I think if you run events, stop asking people to work for free or less than minimum wage, like, and also stop paying, like, I know, because I'm not going to give names, but I've had conversations with people who know that women were paid less than men, or like purely because of like the status of, like, people say, oh, you know, that person's more experienced or they have a bigger following or whatever, so like they're going to command a higher price. we approached all of our speakers for next year and we offered them the same fee. Every single one of them are being paid the same thing. You know, there was no issue at all. And we paid everyone the same fee this year as well, like the exact same money, travel expenses and the same fee. And it was, you know, it was a higher fee than I know that the most of the industry is. But we wanted to make sure that people got paid properly for their time and for their experience. I really hate it. Sorry, this is like a rant now. You're just sat there like nodding and smiling. I really like, because we do this, don't we, in the particularly in the wedding industry, charge your worth, you know, charge your charge what you know, work less, earn more, all of those things, which is not true. It's not true. I don't disagree with that, like, at all. Your business is your business. How you choose to run it, as long as you're being paid properly and you're not giving yourself burnout, is fine. But then in the education space and like memberships and stuff, it's, can you come and speak in my membership and we're not going to pay you? Or like, we're going to give you £200 for like speaking at this conference. That's not acceptable for people who have like years of knowledge. And that, you know, it's not just like an hour. Yeah, it's an hour's talk, but I don't know about you, but when I put presentations together, it's a lot of work.
It's months of work sometimes.
Yeah, as well as the year's worth of experience. And, you know, we got criticized quite a lot for our ticket price being like more expensive than other spaces. But that's because trust me, we definitely did. We were nowhere near breaking even. But we priced it to make sure that we could, that if we sold out, we would break even. That meant that everyone was paid properly, even if it ate into profit margins. And I just think, like, why are we doing this? Like, and then it becomes a benchmark for the pricing of workshops and conferences, that tickets cost X amount. But then those events might not be paying people properly.
Yeah.
So, like, as an industry as well, if an event seems really cheap for what you're getting, maybe ask, how much are you paying your speakers? How much are you paying the people who are doing the style shoot? You know, yeah.
I am fully on board with paying people. Like for workshops, when I used to do them, I always paid my models. And people are like, oh, how do you get models not to cancel? You pay them. Like, so many people are like, oh, my models always cancel for stuff. Yeah, it's because you're not valuing them. And obviously it's less that speakers will cancel because their name's on things, but I find it really hypocritical when people are like, we really value you and your knowledge, please come and speak to our community, we'll pay your expenses to get here and a very small amount of money. And then you see the other people speaking, you're like, well, they flew in from another continent, I'm guessing they're not getting the same speaking fee that I did, because that wouldn't even cover their airfare.
No, I disagree with that. We talked about that beforehand. We've got one speaker next year who's flying from LA, but he was UK based. It's just that he's now moved there. So obviously we will pay for his travel, but he's still getting the same fee as everyone else. It just means his travel is going to be a bit more expensive. But like, we try to look in-house, like, because there is a wealth of talent within the UK. And yeah, this whole like flying people in from far away and things, I get it, it's glamorous, it means you get access to someone you probably wouldn't normally get access to. But that knowledge can come from there's lots of valuable knowledge and experience and expertise within your own countries as well. Oh no, I'm definitely an anti, like you said, the pedestal culture, big names. Also, because I find a lot of people, this is just my personal opinion, which I'm giving everyone now for free. I may have talked about this before on a rant. If not, it's on one of the upcoming planned rants. But also with big names, often they're people who found their success, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, where that just is not
you can't replicate that these days. The whole industry, the whole space, how we market, everything has changed. And yes, big names can sell tickets, but actually, except for being inspirational as a speaker, I find so much more value in learning from people who you maybe have never heard of them, but they're just in their corner doing fucking amazing things. And you will learn when you hear from them so much more usually that you can actually take away and apply to your business, because you didn't get your fame from going viral or having, connections with certain planners or whatever. It's literally from your own hard work, merits. You may have got some luck in there too, but you created that luck. But I so much value in bringing on people who no one's ever heard of. But it is hard to sell tickets.
And also like the awards culture as well there, I think plays into that. Like people people will often get people to speak who've won lots and lots of awards. That doesn't necessarily make them a good educator. And also we have to also acknowledge the awards culture, because it is mostly male. There's some amazing women and other marginalized people who are also winning awards. I don't want to like dismiss them, but the majority, it's male. And there is so many reasons for that, and that is accessibility. Again, like, women are more likely to be mothers. They're usually the primary caregivers of children. That means they don't have time to sit down and like curate their work for hours into awards selections, which means they're far less likely to enter. And also, like, awards aren't important to everyone either. But I think that's maybe like slightly lazy research. Like, it's easy to look at like, oh, this person like won X photographer of the year or whatever, so we're going to get them on board to come and speak because everyone will know who they are, without really thinking about what they're actually going to be bringing.
No, I would love it if more events, just going from my own experience of being approached to speak at things, if more care was taken into actually going to the people you want to speak and saying, hey, I've heard you, either just from, like you said, from an activism point of view of, I've heard you being really vocal about this topic, I'd love you to come and talk to our community. Or we see that you're doing a certain things. Like for me, like, people who listen to this know that I'm obsessed with niching, and I think it is like the secret key to unlocking so much, even though loads of people misunderstand it. But like this whole day of going, I see you doing something different, I'd love you to come and talk to our community about it, as opposed to just going to people who have got a big name and saying, can you come and present? And it's like, is there something in particular you had in mind that you wanted me to talk about? Is there a reason why you're asking me? Or is it just because I've won some awards and I've got a big following? Like, I'd love more event organizers to actually, like you said, put that thought process into the speakers. And when they approach them, from my perspective of being approached to speak at stuff, I want to know why they've approached me. Also for their audience, of like, how can I make sure the message that I have to share is presented in a way that is relevant to their audience and accessible. I
think this is good research though. Like, we definitely approach people because we like what they're doing, or we've maybe engaged with a project that they've done or something they're putting out. So we've obviously, and also a lot of those people aren't photographers, because like we kind of want the scope of our talks to be a mix of inspirational activism, and also like actual practical things. So like next year we've got like Tom Wright talking about editing and workflow, and I've known him for a while and I've been keeping an eye on what he's been doing. I really like his podcast. So like I approached him and asked him to speak at Snap, and it's because I have that specific thing in mind. I know a lot of people struggle with their editing and their workflow. So Tom is and I also know that from the help that he's given people, that he genuinely knows what he's like talking about. And he's also, you can tell from how he puts stuff out, he's invested in giving value. He's passionate about it. We've got Rachel Waring talking about Pinterest, because Pinterest is like a massive untapped resource and lots of people don't do it properly, or they don't really know a lot about it, because it's a harder platform to be on, right? Because you're not getting like the gratification that you get on social media, but it has huge value. So we want to kind of demystify that for people. So of course I look for someone who's doing amazing stuff in the Pinterest area, and Rachel is the person who comes up. The same with SEO, and we have someone talking about that next year, because we want people to go away with stuff that actually empowers them to have better businesses and more of the success that they want. And yeah, we've also got the inspirational stuff, like Kai's, it's inspiration and activism. We've got amazing Giselle speaking as well, and she has a book which is incredible, which I've got here, which is called Take It In, and it's about slow living, it's about slowing down, and that's really important. I've definitely changed my life to be more slow and to say no to work more, which ultimately generates more work for people within my industry and community, rather than burning myself out by trying to do it all, and like having the mindset of having enough rather than accumulating. You know, I've been six figures, like I was a six-figure photographer for 2 years, and I scaled back this year because I was gonna kill myself, frankly.
Yeah, I know that
I
one.
was so unwell, and it was really scary to scale back down, but it's really powerful, and my life is so much happier. So like, we want people who, and so it's like, obviously that's something that I'm focusing on. So like Giselle was the perfect person because I found so much value in that. So yeah, it's all about like thinking about what can really help people rather than names, and then going out and finding the people who are like owning those spaces. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, no, I love all of that, and I'm really, you'll have to send me Giselle's, the name of her book again, and I'll also link that in the show notes, but also because I want to get a copy. It sounds great.
Go follow her on Instagram as well. I'll send you some links. I'll send you links to all of the people.
Amazing. Well, I guess we've been talking for a little while, so it's a good time to wrap up. So what I'd love to do just to wrap up is, so we've obviously been talking a lot about Snap, and I'd love to know, you just introduced who a few of the speakers are, but just to give the people who are listening an overview for Big Snap 2024, because obviously that's the main event.
Yeah.
A little bit about what it is, when it is, and yeah, for people who are curious, like tell them why they should come.
So Snap 24 is going to be different to Snap 23. We, again, that kind of accessibility and learning, we kind of, from feedback from people as to why they weren't buying tickets, one of the big things was that a lot of our attendees are parents, they have young children, and of course it's more female as well, so primary caregivers of children, which is obviously not limited to just female gender, yeah, so we kind of like 4 days is quite a long time for people to go away. Also, like, we were residential this year, which we're not doing next year, and the reason for that is because it's really expensive to have a residential. Like, we did accommodation, all of the food, like everything, which cost, I think it was like £35,000 just for that. So exclusive hire venue plus catering and paying for all the staff and stuff there. So like, it meant that our ticket price was higher, purely because we had to cover those costs. So we decided to make it non-residential for next year, because obviously it brings our venue costs down, and it's also over 2 days, so it's on the 23rd and 24th of April next year. It's going to be outskirts of London. We actually haven't got our venue yet. We are researching that at the moment, because we want to make sure that we don't lose what we had this year, and obviously venue research does take time. We ultimately want somewhere on the outskirts of London. We don't want it to be in the city, because we want access to nature and the outdoors, and we'd also really like to find somewhere that people can book to stay if they want to stay on site, so probably like a hotel or something like that. We did have somewhere and it was perfect, and then they double booked us, so that was a bit annoying. In the reality of authenticity and running events, venues are the hardest part. So yeah, we're still doing research on that, but we will be releasing it as soon as we have it, but it will be within the southeast. And yeah, we just don't want to lose that connection to nature. It takes place over 2 days, and we kind of do a mix of stuff. So we have our talks from our speakers. So we have 8 talks. We have a lot of social time as well, like people be able to play board games, go for walks together, all of those things. We also do a style shoot because we know that people want content. For me, I'm not really a style shoot person. Again, this is why I have a team do the style shoot, because I know that this is important to some people. And actually it was really good fun this year. I did enjoy it. And it was nice to be creative and almost a bit like we had quite a statement style shoot that was very beautiful. So we will have another style shoot, and that's being done by Stephanie Dreams Photography and Carmela Weddings again. So I'm excited about what that will be. And we also do like business masterminding. So we had, like, this year we had prompts on the projector, and we encourage people to get into groups, and if you wanted people to review your website or help with some blogging or ask questions or help with a workflow problem. I think there's a lot of power in, and there's a lot of value, and also it's empowering for the community to be able to help one another. So yeah, that was, and we just kind of did it in a way where everyone gets an opportunity to like say what they need and ask for any help. They don't have to if they didn't want to. That's the other thing as well, always making sure that everything is optional at any given point. We'll still have yoga again, because yoga is great. And yeah, we will have a party. We'll have a closing something at the end, but it won't be like our main feature. But yeah, we're just looking for the right space. If anyone has any recommendations, please feel free to message me. Me and Rosie are in the processes now. We've got our eyes on a couple of places. But yeah, we just want to make sure, and we want it to be like the place that we find, we want that to be home for Snap. Like, we going forward, like, we're really sad that we're not able to go back to Mount Cook next year, but it's just not financially viable to do it residentially. So we ultimately want to find our home, which we go to year in, year out. Like, again, I think it's the sustainability thing as well at the same time. Like, yeah, it's great when everything's new and shiny and exciting and things like that, but we also selected Mount Cook because of their environmental footprint. Like, they were newly built, they did work within the community, like us supporting them made sure, like, because they gave access to the outdoors to children from really vulnerable places. They were solar powered, like they really had put everything in thought into their environment and things like that. So like, we do also want to, finding the right space isn't just finding somewhere that's pretty, it's also again, we want the ethics of our company to be that we support places which are sustainable, and things like that. So yeah, it's a big job, but yeah, Snap next year, we really hope people say there's a bit of pressure actually to recreate what there was this year. Like, I'm really not gonna lie that there's a little bit of a oh, can we do that again thing, because it was just so incredible. So yeah, I think, but it's Snap isn't just the event in April, it's the whole thing. We have co-working next week in London on the 5th of July. We have a picnic in August, and we also have we have a headshot swap at the end of July as well. So like, we're always organizing stuff, like, so it's not just about the big events. So just come and meet us. Like, you can find our Facebook group, you can find our Instagram, we've got an email list, which I really love to give out as much value on as possible. So we're not just selling, obviously we do need to sell stuff to people, but we like to make sure that they're like getting something good as well. So yeah, do come and check out like our stuff. And we've also got a small retreat in Scotland happening this October, which will go out for sale next month. And that's not going to be like business photography focused. That's going to be rest and engaging with creativity and nature and just being in a nice space and yeah, feeling good. Like, I think also we don't want Snap to just be like hustle, 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 business success. We also want to help people have happier lives.
Awesome. That's great. And I will link all of those different things that you mentioned in the show notes so that people can find them and can connect with you and can connect with Snap and hopefully with each other as well, and just build a really great community.
It's really nice to see people making friends. Like that's probably like the best bit. Every time me and Rosie do something, because like both of us are like, we can fight. It's not an easy task. It's not a natural space for us. So we're always like in the build up to stuff, and I can get quite stressed. I can be quite difficult to work with sometimes, especially if I get overwhelmed. Like I have my little like meltdown a bit. So like, but when we're in it and we see people like connecting with each other and enjoying themselves, and like I remember at Snap after the styled shoot, which had been such a big task for everyone involved, I remember just kind of coming back up to Mount Cook and walking into the venue and seeing everyone like eating dinner together, like all the models and suppliers and the attendees and the speakers, like everyone was just together and so happy because they'd been out creating together, and I just burst into tears because I was just like, oh my god, it actually worked. So yeah, it's a big thing for us, but that's what we just love it. We love seeing people make friends and find connections, and yeah, just enjoying being part of their industry and their business as well.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. I do. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me about everything Snap and life, and yeah, it's been amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I just really want to just say one more time that if I have, because we talked about some big topics in this podcast, if I have got something wrong, or like said something wrong, or you want to, or I've upset anyone, or just whatever, you can message me and let me know. It's really not a problem.
Likewise, and the same for anyone who ever wants to call me out on anything. I am always open to that, because as most people who listen to this, I am brutally honest, and that is one of the things that I like to offer to people, especially my coaching clients, and I like to think that people can be brutally honest with me too. So yes, let's just be more honest, and let's just
normalize that and calling people out, and it not being like the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Amy. That's just been amazing to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, stop recording.